Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to day one of the Island Finance Forum 2024. Thank you so much for joining this session. Please, as you come in, I invite you to use the chat function to introduce yourself, where you're joining from, and any comments you may have during the session, please leave them in there. So my name is Vincent Duringer. I am the PR and editorial lead here at Island Innovation, and I'm very happy to be moderating this session titled Empowering SIDS, in conversation with Mr. Saud Minam, the CEO of the Fiji Development Bank. Good evening, Mr. Minam. I know it's getting a bit late over there, but thank you for joining us. I'd like to take this time to give you an opportunity to talk a bit more about the Fiji Development Bank and what does sustainable finance mean for you?
Wonderful. First of all, Bula Vinaka, and very good evening, everyone, and good afternoon, whichever part of the world you are, or good morning. And it is a great pleasure for me to be a part of this great forum. Initially, when I was approached, I looked at it and I thought that, yes, it'll be great for me to share some of these things which we have been doing it in Fiji for the rest of you guys as well. Fiji Development Bank, it's the only development bank in Fiji. We've been there for the last 57 years. It's basically providing some of those things which normally the development bank should do that, and that would be your SME, MSME, and your agriculture. And those are the three main segments which we look at it and focus on that. Our main goal is to provide access to finance to especially some of those vulnerable and marginalized communities, which we have been able to really do a good job in the last about year and a half, 2 years. As far as the sustainable finance, I mean, if you really look at it, Vincent, we now are looking at the sustainable finance. Under that sustainable finance, it can be the green finance or the blue finance or the inclusion, financial inclusion, diversity. So there's everything comes under that sustainable finance. Everyone should we'd be happy to share this with everyone that we are the only financial institution in Pacific Island countries which has been accredited by the Green Climate Fund. So we have the accreditation for GCF as well, which it is good in terms of accessing those expertise from a GCF, but obviously it takes a long time to get those funding and the technical assistance coming in from there. But at the end of the day, it's always a learning, and it's how do we bring the practices from them and into our own businesses.
Thank you. Just going on the GCF accreditation, would you say that is an opportunity for the Fiji Development Bank to have that accreditation, then I guess to also work on projects across the Pacific? And do you think there's a pathway potentially for more accreditation for other institutions in the region?
Very good question, Vincent. I think the way the GCF model works, each country has to be accredited in order to access the financing from the GCF. So regardless of the size of the country, it has to go through the whole process of accreditation, which I personally feel that's not the right thing to do. And I have been conversation with Executive Director Mafelda on GCF. And one of the main reasons is because, if you look at the size of Fiji, that's about 900,000 people. And then you look at Cook Island in Fiji, in Pacific, which has only about 17,000 people. And there are countries in Pacific Island countries which have total population of 4,000, 5,000 people. And if those countries have to be accredited, where will we find the resources and how are we going to carry on with that one? So my plea has been to the GCF and the other organizations like that, and then we need to create a hub, and that would be a regional hub, would be sometime in Fiji. We've already been accredited for our own local. Is there a possibility that we can be a conduit or can we support these small island development states? So that would be a great opportunity for us to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that access to financing is something a lot of small island developing states and island communities are having issues with. But I know we're seeing a lot of developments in terms of looking at nature-based solutions, investments into a green or blue economy. as you mentioned. So do you think that this new interest that we're seeing globally anyways, to maybe invest a bit more and help developing economies to tap into those resources, you think that will help with the GCF accreditation?
Well, it does. Obviously, it helps every little bit which we do towards the green economy or the blue economy. That helps get the accreditation piece, because that shows a sign of maturity of the organization and the country, which I think the GCF is actually looking for. Other than that, there's another element which I'd like to bring it over here, Vincent, if I may. It's not only about the GCF in terms of which basically can support the green and the blue and the sustainable, and as well as the diversity. It's there are other organizations are out there in the world which may be able to support SIDS, and especially in Pacific, because you got to understand that our scale is very small. We do not have a large, scale projects. You will hardly hear that any Pacific Island country is coming up with $250 million sort of a project. We normally have 5, 10, 15, 20. That's the max, maybe going into $50 million. There will be one in a, dime in a dozen. But at the end of the day, you have organizations like ADB, you have organizations like AFD, which is, I think it's some development country, bank in France. So those sort of organizations can also support these sort of things. My take on that is not only look for the GCF, which is good to have, because that's I think it's a door opener. But once you have the door open, then you need to go and explore some other options which are also available in the market. Not only that, I mean, like the Quaker, JICA, they are also out there, especially in Pacific Island Forum platform, or on all these Pacific Island countries, which will be able to access those funding from them as well. So while I'm on funding piece, not only the funding piece, I think the more important is for SIDS is just to get access of the technical assistance programs, which is very, very important. And the way I look at it, because most of these small island countries, and I'm very surprised why Singapore isn't part of the small island countries list, but there is no way they're short of the funds. But most of these small island countries, they don't have that much budget. So it's always important to have these other organizations coming in and supporting us for technical assistance, rather than coming in and doing the project. It's more to develop and train our local people and retain them, so we can actually continue our business.
No, absolutely. It's resilience building, isn't it, at different levels? And speaking of which, what projects at the moment would you say the Fiji Development Bank is developing that you see a lot of promise in?
Well, if, as I said earlier, in terms of our mandate, is the MSME, SMEs, as well as the agriculture. What we are now doing is we are actually clubbing most of our products which are under different products. For an example, if I look at the SME loans can be your working capital, can a purchase of a vehicle or a tractor, or those sort of things. So we've actually clubbed them under a product which is called SME Sustainable Package, which requires very minimum base requirements in terms of the documentation requirement, and we have a very attractive interest rates for a certain amount of money, which basically been given out. So those are very aggressively being marketed out there in Fiji. Not only that, but when you look at the smart agriculture programs, I mean, everyone in the world is now talking about the smart agriculture, the drip, and the drone mechanism, checking through your internet and controlling everything through your computer, your agriculture. You having a solar water pump, so those sort of things. We are now embarking our journey in that field as well, because with the lack of resources available in terms of the human, it is important that all these small island development states should start looking into these things. And by the way, those are not very expensive propositions. I mean, if you go and look around here and there, you'll be able to capture good funds at a very, very, very decent prices.
Absolutely. So the support structure is not just the projects themselves. I think the takeaway there. So yeah, smart agriculture definitely been a hot talking point. Fiji specifically, I know with blue bonds. A couple of years ago was already doing a lot in terms of there, and I know renewable energy is also a conversation that is being happened in terms of development in Fiji. So, is there one of those specific areas that you see potential in for Fiji, but also for the Greater Pacific and potentially blueprints for other SIDS?
Yeah, I think when you talk about the blue bond, government of Fiji actually launched the blue bond recently, and it was subscribed by the government of Fiji, and the funds which were available had been provided to all those vulnerable communities. Would be your closer to the sea communities, as well as relocation adaptation, and not only that, but I mean in terms of the fisheries. So those funds are very attractive in terms of the return for the investors, and the funds are basically utilized at a proper place. So that's one part. The other thing which we can look at into it is like the solar, which is the alternate, source of energy. We do have quite a few of these solar stations, not only in Fiji, but I think a lot of these Pacific Island countries, they have that. But now we are moving more and more in towards solar plus wind together, combining with your data. With that would be your Wi-Fi's and the SIM cards within that. So there are a lot of these innovations are coming in, and one of the main reasons is because if you really look at it from the Pacific Island countries, they are not in close to each other. There's a huge differences, and within the country you have those small islands where you have people living. So it becomes very expensive for the government to build that infrastructure. So I think we really need to look into the alternate resources, and that would be be the solar, and coming up with some sort of working with the telephone companies or the satellite companies, where we will be able to provide some of the data on that one. Not only that, but we have actually got one of the big solar project going on with starting it with it's a multiple thing. One, you have about a 2 meters high solar panels, and under the solar panels we have the agriculture going on. So it serves the both purposes, because if you have only the solar, the surface below the solar panel is unutilized. So I think this is the newest model which we are actually experiencing and experimenting here in Fiji, and with the success of this, that can be very useful for across Pacific Island countries.
Yeah, have to be efficient with resources and space, right? So I think it's also similarly with financing. But are there any financial tools or, well, we just talked about some innovative approaches, but maybe some tools that you've either discovered or that you see coming down the pipeline in terms of best practice that can be used for getting some of these grants or some of this funding?
Yeah, I think it all depends on the country to country. But in Fiji, we are in a very peculiar stage where we do not need the external funding. We've got ample liquidity in country. So that's one piece. But having said that, it's always rather than having the funding available, because most of the Pacific Island countries are self-funded and they have ample liquidity in the countries. So it'll be more important to work with these organizations like the GCF, ADB, or AFD to work on a credit guarantee schemes, whereby rather than giving us the lending money to lend onward, they can provide some sort of a guarantee to our portfolios. That would be suppose if you're a farmer and you're starting a business, and you're ticking the box with the green and the blue, then you would be able to get a 70% credit guarantee from those organizations. What it does, it basically reduces our risk to the customer, and we would be able to go out more into the market. So my take on that is, until unless there is a acute shortage of your liquidity, work with these organizations to see how they can provide you the credit guarantee schemes.
Oh, brilliant. So do you really see that as an opportunity that is being developed actively? So I know it's something that you'd like to see happen, and it certainly makes sense, at least. But with financing, we know that these things are often more difficult than meets the eye in terms of policy and enacting it. But do you think that's something that we can see coming forward?
Sure. As a matter of fact, we have been able to sign up with AFD, which is the Agri-France Development Bank, and last year they had given us a $3 million worth, 3 million euro guarantee, which is close to about 6.67 million Fijian dollars. What it does that if they have given us a certain criteria, which is very flexible criteria, and if the customer meets those criteria, we will be able to secure that particular lending up to 70% of that guarantee. So that has started it. And within 9 months, we've been able to give out close to about $2 million worth of loans to our customers backed by the guarantee. It does two things to the bank. So one is it reduces the risks, so you don't have to do a lot of provisioning part of that one. And second, you can start going on to the sectors, which I earlier talked about, the vulnerable and the marginalized one, where banks are reluctant to go because of the high risk factor of that one. The other thing which basically it adds into that, which I also talked about it, not only the financing piece, but it comes along with the technical assistance part. So today we have just signed up again with the AFD for almost like €500,000 technical assistance. What it does, we are going through revamping all our process, procedures, and policies, and making sure they're all green and the blue. It's kind of like a sustainable financing process in there. So that also supports us in terms of we don't have the money. We are not an international bank. We are a local bank. Where do we go to? So these are the donor agencies or the multilateral organizations which will be able to help us. So my advice to anyone and everyone across Pacific Island countries, I'm more than happy to take anyone through this whole process. Reach out to me and I'll be happy to guide you guys.
Thank you very much. I think just one last quick question before we start to wrap up. But so in terms of empowering SIDS for the future, we've had your thoughts, and thank you very much. But what do you see as an opportunity potentially a couple of years down the road? So we've talked about short term, but what do you see as some mid to long term solution that you'd like to see come in for sustainable financing?
Very good question. I think we need another half an hour on that one, Vincent. Sorry, but you see, world is not only Fiji. The world has to understand why Africa is moving, way ahead of, in terms of the progress, is because the sheer size of the continent, right? When you look at Pacific, the entire population of Pacific is close to about, 20 million max, if it can reach, which I seriously doubt it. It's not, because the largest country is about 7 to 8 million people. So even if it's 10 to 15 million people, the scale is not there. For us to move forward, which will benefit every small island development nation in Pacific, we need to change the lens of those organizations. We can't look at us in exactly the same way as you're looking at some of the other countries. I hear all day long, $50 million here, sustainable financing funds, funding available and been given to Cambodia, to Vietnam, to Philippines, these sort of countries, or in Africa as well, might as well on that one, right? But where are we? Because we don't have those projects. But I think my request to all of these people is that, yes, this is what we would like to see. Change the lens, look at it as more of a development. The last thing, which is not everything has to be tied with the benefits and the bottom line as well. We need to look at these places where we are not the ones who are basically adding towards the environment issues. Fiji or any other Pacific Island countries, we are the ones who are suffering it from them. So how do you do that piece? One last is a small example. Shipping boats, they're all run on diesel. Why can't we run it through solar? We can, right? So in order to do this, they have to change the entire fleet. And to change the fleet, they would have to have the millions of dollars. Even if the private entrepreneur are willing to do that, but the return is not going to be there. So we will continue to do this. So it has to be a mindset change at a very big level, which I am continuing to pursue on at any and every forum about these sort of things. So that would be my take if we want to be successful to short to medium term.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you very much. I think we will have another session, I think, just to talk about that. So you talked about a lot of
Yeah.
very good things there. But I'd like to thank you very much for your time. And I'd like to thank everyone who's here to listen in. And obviously, this will be available to rewatch on YouTube and on our social media platforms. And for everyone who's missed it, potentially, if you didn't watch the opening session, we announced some very exciting news. Island Innovation, as you may know, is partnering with the government of Prince Edward Island in Canada to host the first ever Global Sustainable Island Summit there. So it's a 2-day in-person summit that'll be happening in May, and they'll be discussing solutions and advancements for sustainable energy. Everyone who is attending the IFF has been sent a special discount code for tickets while they last. So please check your emails, and hopefully we'll see you in Canada. I'd like to thank you again, Mr. Minam, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of the IFF.